East Africa includes the countries that border the Red Sea and Indian Ocean: Sudan, Eritrea, Djibouti, Somalia, Kenya, and Tanzania, as well as their inland neighbors Ethiopia, Uganda, Rwanda, and Burundi. This is the most mountainous region of Africa. Volcanic activity millions of years ago created spectacular variations in the landscape. Among the geographic high points are the Ethiopian highlands, which are home to 80% of Africa's tallest mountains, the Great Rift Valley stretching for about 3,000 miles, and Africa's two tallest peaks, Mount Kilimanjaro and Mount Kenya. The highlands feature fertile plains where farmers grow crops and graze livestock. Kenya and Tanzania have tropical grasslands called savannas that are home to a wide variety of animals, including elephants, lions, giraffes, and hippos. The Serengeti National Park in Tanzania is one of the largest wildlife sanctuaries in the world. Tanzania can also boast of two of the most remarkable lakes in East Africa: Lake Natron, named for the salt deposits found there, and Lake Tanganyika, on the border with Congo, the longest freshwater lake in the world. Tanzania, Kenya, and Uganda border Lake Victoria, the world's second largest freshwater lake and the main source of the Nile River. The majority of people in East Africa live in rural areas and they farm or raise cattle. Some, like the Maasai in Tanzania and Kenya, are still nomadic cattle herders, living as their ancestors did. In contrast, you'll find Western clothing and modern businesses in the region's largest cities of Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and Nairobi, Kenya. East Africans practice Christianity and Islam, and many speak Swahili. From the stunning mountaintops to the shores of the Indian Ocean, East Africa offers some of the greatest contrast on the continent. Burundi is located in East Central Africa, south of the equator. It borders Rwanda on the north, Tanzania on the east, Lake Tanganyika and the Democratic Republic of the Congo on the west. Burundi is slightly smaller than Maryland. The western area of the country includes the Ruzizi River and Lake Tanganyika. East of this area is mountainous, and farther east is a region of plateaus where most of the population lives. The capital of Burundi is Bujumbura. Burundi is a small, poor, and densely populated country. The economy of Burundi relies almost entirely on agriculture. Farmers grow beans, corn, plantains, and coffee, which is Burundi's chief export. The official languages of Burundi are French and Kirundi, a Bantu language. About 2/3 of the people are Christian, and the rest follow traditional beliefs. Like Rwanda, Burundi experiences tensions between the Hutu and Tutsi ethnic groups. Since 1993, approximately 200,000 Burundians have died in clashes between the two sides. Even as efforts at peace are underway, the State Department continues to warn United States citizens against travel to Burundi. The United Nations is preparing a peacekeeping force to help resolve many of the country's political problems to improve life for future Burundians.
Rwanda is a small, landlocked country lying south of the equator in East Central Africa. It is bordered by the Democratic Republic of the Congo on the west, Uganda in the north, Tanzania in the east, and Burundi in the south. Rwanda is the most densely populated country in Africa, with nearly 8 million people, more than half of whom live in poverty. Rwanda is a primarily agricultural country, with 90% of the workforce in subsistence farming. Kigali is the capital and largest town. A civil war began in 1990 between the Hutu, who account for almost 90% of the Rwandan population, and the Tutsi people. At the height of the violence in 1994, it is estimated that 800,000 Rwandans, mostly Tutsi, died. Tutsi forces defeated the Hutus and assumed control of the government in July 1994. Today, many Rwandan children are responsible for taking care of their family and raising their younger siblings because their parents died during the genocide. In addition to going to school, these children attempt to provide food, clothes, and shelter to their siblings. According to the United Nations Children's Fund, more than 100,000 children are living in households without adults. The situation in Rwanda has gained the attention of international aid organizations that are working to improve the children's quality of life and to protect their human rights. Somalia lies on what is called the Horn of Africa, bounded on the north by the Gulf of Aden and on the east by the Indian Ocean. To the west lie Kenya and Ethiopia, and to the northwest, Djibouti. Somalia has a dry climate and a semi-desert landscape covered in thorn bushes. The capital is Mogadishu, Somalia's largest city and major port, located just north of the equator on the Indian Ocean. Most Somali people are Muslim, and about half the population live a nomadic lifestyle. Although Somali is the national language, Arabic, Italian, and English are also widely spoken. Somalia has been battered by civil war for more than 10 years as rival clans and dissident factions fight for control of the country. In 1992, the war coincided with the worst African drought in a century. A devastating famine killed 300,000 Somalis. Thousands more fled to Ethiopia to escape the fighting. Many are now returning to their homeland. Though the political situation in the country is unstable, international aid organizations are attempting to improve the quality of life. Clean water, rebuilt wells and generators, as well as education are providing relief to the long-suffering Somali people. Uganda is a landlocked country in East Africa. It is bordered by Sudan to the north, Kenya to the east, Tanzania and Rwanda to the south, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo to the west. Uganda's capital city, Kampala, is built around 7 hills near Lake Victoria, the largest lake in Africa. To the southwest lies the Bwindi Impenetrable National Park, well known for its variety of wildlife. Many types of birds and butterflies make their home in the dense jungle. But the park's best-known residents are the mountain gorillas. Uganda is home to half of the world's population of mountain gorillas, the largest and rarest of the 3 gorilla subspecies. The latest census puts the total number of mountain gorillas in the world at less than 700. Years of poaching and habitat destruction have brought the primates to the brink of extinction. Mountain gorillas are shy, and they fight only when threatened. They live in close-knit family groups of up to 30 members. A large part of the day is spent foraging for food. They eat roots, leaves, bark from trees, shrub-sized plants, and bamboo shoots. Dominant male mountain gorillas reach an average height of 6 feet tall when standing, and they can weigh up to 500 pounds. When males reach adulthood, a patch of fur on their backs lightens, and they are called silverbacks. Females are smaller, only 4 to 5 feet tall, and weigh 150 to 200 pounds. Today, mountain gorillas live only in Uganda, Rwanda, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Conservation programs are helping to protect the endangered mountain gorillas through a variety of methods, including population monitoring, anti-poaching activities, and habitat conservation. Scientists hope that the mountain gorillas can make a comeback.
Ethiopia is a country in northeastern Africa, almost twice the size of Texas. Ethiopia is bordered by Eritrea, Sudan, Kenya, Djibouti, and Somalia. This country is one of the oldest in the world. It is also the place that 11-year-old Asbeth calls home. Like many people in this country, Asbeth and her family are farmers. The family is lucky to live in the Rift Valley, Ethiopia's most fertile area. Here, they plant coffee, sugarcane, and potatoes, and herd the family's cattle. But Asbeth's life is different from that of her father and brothers. While they work in the fields, Asbeth has to find water, a precious resource in this landlocked country. Today, Asbeth has been lucky enough to find water close to her family's village. But droughts and water shortages happen all the time in the Rift Valley, and it's only a matter of time before this well dries up. Finding water is just one of Asbeth's chores. The family also depends on her to help her mother cook, clean, and look after her younger brothers and sisters. Bread is an important part of the Ethiopian diet. In order to make the bread, Asbeth must crush wheat by hand with a large grinding stone. It sometimes takes hours before the wheat grains are fine enough to be made into bread. Asbeth's home in Ethiopia's Rift Valley is one of the most fertile areas in the country. But frequent droughts can turn the Rift Valley from a rich garden into a barren desert. And the constant grazing of herd animals can erode the land. Droughts have forced Asbeth and families like hers to leave their homes in order to get food that has been flown in from other countries. But unlike many Ethiopians, Asbeth and her family have hope. The seasons are changing, and it looks as if there will be good rainfall this year. And with rations and foreign food aid, the family will have enough food to last until next harvest. Asbeth's family will depend on her work until she is married. Then she'll have to make a life for her new family. But for today, she and other girls like her carry on as they have for generations in Ethiopia's fertile Rift Valley. Kenya is located in East Africa. It is twice the size of Nevada and is bordered by Ethiopia, Somalia, Tanzania, Uganda, Sudan, and the Indian Ocean. Kenya is also a place where people grow a special crop called French beans. Each year, Kenyan farmers grow so many of these beans that millions of pounds can be sold to restaurants in the United Kingdom, Germany, and especially France. Beans are a billion-dollar business in this African country, but farmers haven't always grown French beans in Kenya. In the early 1900s, settlers from Europe built huge plantations where farmers grew coffee and tea for sale to countries in Europe. Crops that are grown only for sale are known as cash crops. So much of the land was used for coffee and tea production during this time that there was little room for native Kenyans to grow fruits and vegetables. But when native Kenyans won their independence from Great Britain in 1963, they regained control of their land and which crops could be grown there. Today, almost 8 million Kenyans work in agriculture. Most grow food on small farms, which provide food for the farmers and their families. Nearly 70% of Kenya's population are farmers. Many cultivate beans for sale to foreign countries. Growing beans for export is one of the easiest ways for farmers to make money.
She can pick up to 10 cartons of beans
a day.
A day. And one carton, she is paid 6 shillings. So she can make 60 shillings in harvesting beans in one day.
However, getting beans to the marketplace can be a big problem for local farmers. Many Kenyans live in scattered farms, miles away from the large urban areas of Nairobi, the capital of Kenya, and the port city Mombasa. Instead of traveling themselves, many Kenyan farmers sell their bean crops to companies that send vegetables to other countries. Kenyan farmers use some of their money to build schools and to make old factories more modern. But just how much money these farmers get depends on the quality of their crops. Drought and flooding during the rainy season can easily destroy crops on Kenyan farms. Water pollution from pesticides and fertilizers, soil erosion from planting too often, and the process of desertification, where fertile lands become desert, are also threatening bean crops in Kenya. Despite environmental problems, the bean that has made this country an agricultural powerhouse keeps growing and making its way through Africa, Europe, and beyond. "500 miles east of Madagascar in the Indian Ocean lies the tiny island nation of Mauritius. The entire land area here is less than 800 square miles, slightly larger than half the size of Rhode Island. Like other islands this size, Mauritius has struggled to overcome the obstacles of being both small and isolated, with limited natural resources. Europeans occupied Mauritius for 4 centuries, farming the island's main crop, sugarcane. Mauritians finally won their independence in 1968, but their trouble was far from over. Many lived in poverty. The economy struggled largely because Mauritius had to buy everything it consumed from outsiders. Everything, that is, except sugar. Sugarcane blankets the island, and even today grows on 90% of the cultivated land. This complete reliance on one crop meant disaster for Mauritius if bad weather ruined the harvest, or if world demand for sugar dropped. But Mauritius reversed its fortunes in the 1980s by modeling itself after a small but successful island nation, Taiwan. Like Taiwan, Mauritius began offering profitable reasons, such as tax breaks, for businesses to relocate there, and those businesses provided jobs. Mauritius recognized that its greatest resource was its own people. The sugar industry had brought together many cultures: Indians, Europeans, Africans, and Chinese. This industrious population proved attractive to businesses, like textile and clothing manufacturers, who need lots of workers. After living in poverty for years, Mauritians were willing to work even for low wages. More than 9,000 businesses relocated to Mauritius, transforming the economy from agricultural to industrial. Sugarcane now accounts for just 1/4 of the country's exports. As Mauritius began to pull itself out of poverty, some citizens became entrepreneurs, people who start their own businesses. Some opened textile manufacturing companies. Others recognized the export value of other crops, like chilies and exotic flowers. Mauritius also turns its relative isolation into a strength. Tourists now flock to this beautiful island as a tropical getaway. A thriving tourism industry has created even more jobs. The poverty level of Mauritius today is only 10%. An island once struggling to stay afloat is now a shining example of unity, diversity, and industry.
The United Republic of Tanzania is located in eastern Africa and is bordered by Mozambique, Malawi, Zambia, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Burundi, Rwanda, Uganda, Kenya, and the Indian Ocean. Tanzania is slightly larger than twice the size of California and is home to more than 37 million people. The northern border of Tanzania is dominated by Lake Victoria. Lake Victoria is the second largest freshwater lake in the world. It's also one of the main sources of water for the Nile River. Because only 4% of Tanzania's land is usable for farming, Lake Victoria is an important source of food and money for the people who live here. About 30 million people in Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya make their living off of the lake. Fish are plentiful, and some 50,000 fishermen operate on the Tanzanian side of the lake. Their primary catch is Nile perch. Despite its name, the Nile perch is not a native species here. It was introduced in the late 1950s. The Nile perch is a hungry predator that feeds mainly on smaller fish and can grow up to 6 feet long and weigh up to 300 pounds. While the perch in Lake Victoria are generally much smaller, they make up about 80% of each day's catch. A decade ago, the Nile perch were only caught to feed Tanzanians. Today, Nile perch fishing is big business, and the fish are in high demand overseas. Before they can be sold, the fish must be gutted, sorted, and dried in the sun so that they can be transported in the tropical heat. Many local people have formed market trading collectives that run the fish markets and oversee daily deliveries. Although the perch have benefited the fishermen and exporters, many others fear that the perch and the fishing industry that has been built around them may be doing more harm than good. Hundreds of native species in the lake have been killed off by the perch. And the perch themselves are getting smaller because they are running out of food. Also, as more fishing companies and people move to the area, they are removing the vegetation around the lake and further damaging the environment. But for the present, the lake is still a vital resource for the livelihood of the local people. If they can make sure that it stays healthy, the people of Tanzania will be able to keep making a living off of Lake Victoria.